Hi, Brooke.
Hi, Dr. Valerie.
So good to be with you. And would love to talk about how we got to journey together. What was that first moment when you became aware of PSD, and what was that like for you?
Oh my gosh. So I remember like the exact moment of how I learned about your work. And it was Kate Northrup was doing a session, a Facebook Live session, I think in January. And she said this thing of like, she said, being a woman in the world is a traumatic experience. And
Hmm.
then she kept like talking, and I was like, hold the phone. Like, no one had ever said that to me before. Like, I had never even like conceptualized of that concept. And I was like, oh my gosh, like this. It's like, yes, like that is so true. And so then she mentioned at the end of the call, like, oh, like you should read this book, by Dr. Valerie. And I was like, meh, like I ordered it like immediately. And I just remember, actually, no, I didn't even order it. I bought it on Kindle, like right then. And I started reading it like immediately. And I remember reading the introduction and just like crying hysterically because there was something in me that was just like, it resonated so deeply of like, this is like the missing piece for me of like
Mm.
all this work I've done and I still feel like I'm stuck in the same place. And like, this is the reason why. And I think before I even finished the first chapter, I texted like 5 of my friends and I was like, go buy this book right now. Like I had people like buying Patriarchy Stress Disorder before I was even like halfway through it. Um, yeah, and then I remember I had posted something, I think on Facebook or maybe in Kate Northrup's group about like, oh my gosh, this book is amazing and I'm just getting so much out of it. And I'm like, if you've heard Kate talk about it and you haven't read it yet, like go buy it. And then I think someone tagged you in the post and I was like, Dr. Valerie is in this group. And I totally had like this fangirl moment of like, oh my gosh. So that was sort of how I first came in and started discovering what your work is about.
Oh, goosebumps and chills. Thank you so much for diving right in and becoming a champion of this message. And then what happened then? That's where things get very interesting because I hear it from women all the time. There is a lot of resonance with the book, and
Mm-hmm.
there is a difference between knowing you are in prison
Mm-hmm.
and getting yourself out. Knowing you are in prison doesn't set you free. But there is
Yeah.
almost this false closure that happens sometimes with reading the book of, okay, I get this now, I am good. Could you speak to your experience with it? You were resonating with the message. What happened then?
Yeah, well, I remember that after I I posted something on Facebook and you like I think I tagged you and you messaged me and I was like, oh my God, Dr. Valerie's messaging me like again. It was sort of like, so I'm a writer and so other writers are like just like movie stars to me, right? So in any case, you were like, do you want to jump on the phone and like talk about what you're getting out of the book and I can tell you more about my work? And I was like, oh my gosh. And then I knew I was kind of like, she's gonna invite me to work with her and like I don't know if I have any money to pay for this. Like it immediately sort of went into this like scarcity mindset of like, how am I going to afford this? The last like 3 programs I did, I haven't paid off yet. Like I keep investing in this work. Like it really sort of, anyway. So all these things started coming up. And then I remember you and I connected and just had this beautiful conversation. Um, and I just felt like so seen and sort of um, like things surfaced for me that I from like childhood that I had never understood before. Like it was just sort of really a profound experience for me. And I remember I had to sort of like ask you, I'm like, so like how can I work with you? Like you were just sort of listening and like asking me questions and then you said, so first of all, you said, before I talk about like my program, you know, what is it that you desire? And I remember kind of like laughing and being like, well, being able to use the word desire would be a great start. Like, I was kind of like, are we allowed to use that word desire? Because
Mm.
it's such like a juicy word, but I feel like, I don't know, like that's not something in my experience that people I know in my everyday life like, that's not the word that many people use. And so anyway, I was like, oh my gosh, like this, like I want more of this. So I remember you talked me through at that time, this was pre-coronavirus shutdown. And so you were planning your in-person retreat, and I was like, it sounds lovely. Like, and I was like, yes, I'm definitely in. And then I think the next day you sent me the invoice, and I was like, I can't do this. There's no way. Like, I was just like, I can't afford this. What was I thinking? Like, no way. Like, I don't have, like, where do I think this money is coming from? Like, I don't have this money. Like, it really went into like, and I was like, I can't have more credit card debt. I can't, like, I don't have the money. Like, it was really kind of this just total like spiral of like, who do I think I am? Like, I can't have this. I don't have this money. And it really like, for me, it felt like it was all about the money. But like looking back, like it was not. But in that moment, it felt very true to me. I'm just like, well, I'll do this work later. Like, I'm going to save up for it. Like maybe the next round, maybe in 6 months, right? It was sort of like, and I think for me, that was really dangerous of like, I wasn't saying no, but I was saying like, not now.
Yeah.
And I think for me, that was sort of just like this postponing of what I wanted, of like, not feeling comfortable saying yes, but also like there was sort of something in like, by not saying no, it was sort of like not making a decision either way, if that makes sense. It was just sort of like being in that like limbo place. And I'm not saying, by the way, that everyone should like put this money on a credit card or like anything like that, but I'm just saying for me, this was my way of like running away, but like justifying it of like, well, it's just not a good financial decision right now, right? And so I did. I said no, and like you kept messaging me, and I was just like, I just like didn't answer, which is also like very unlike me, right? And I was like, oh, like it just felt like uncomfortable, and I was like, oh, like it was just uncomfortable, and I didn't know like what to do with it, right? So then, this is so funny. I think it was your birthday, and I messaged you to say happy birthday, and you were like, just so you know, you can still jump into the solution. And it was so interesting because at that point we were a few weeks into coronavirus. And so for me, I run my own business. I have 2 little kids. My son is 4 and my daughter is almost 1. They were now home all the time, right? So we didn't have daycare. My husband and I are now like home we're just like in each other's faces. Like, how am I supposed to like keep running my business? Like, I just was totally overwhelmed. And I think emotionally had so much anxiety, and just like, I wasn't sleeping, like I wasn't doing self-care practices, that like, I was just like a total mess, basically. And I was like, and we just kind of picked up having a conversation. And I remember you just said like, I said, I just don't know where this money is going to come from. And you said, listen, like, and I said, you know, the last 3 programs are not paid off, and I can't keep investing and all this stuff. And you just said, listen, like the evidence is there, right? The evidence is there that once we start clearing trauma, like you're able to step out in a whole different way. And you said like someone in the program had already quadrupled her business. And I think it was only like 3 weeks in.
Yes.
You said so many women find that they can't get the ROI on like marketing programs and business programs because they're just caught in the trauma cycle. And you said it's not their fault. And I was just like, it's not my fault. Like, because I just thought like, I'm just not being organized enough with my time. Like, I just really was just like, I must be doing something wrong because I have all this knowledge. I can't seem to like implement. I can't seem to scale. Like, I just felt so stuck. And I just said like, and you said like trauma makes us freeze or flee. And I just said, I'm frozen. And like, I see it. I'm frozen. I see it. And I was just like, let's do this. And I think, and you said, you know, the first payment is $500. And I was like, hold on a second. I have $500. That's my money. That was it was like my own money. It was a gift that I had been saving. And I was just like, I'm going to just trust that the next payments are going to come. And so I did. And I jumped in. And I was just like I think you had me in there the same day. And I was like started the modules like the next day or something. So yeah, I think it was a really powerful moment of being able to see for myself, like, I see the work. I want to do the work. I can't do the work. I want to do the work. I can do the work. Like, it was sort of like this natural process. And I think maybe
Uh-huh.
if I had known ahead of time that that was part of the process, so maybe someone watching is in that space of like, I want to do it. I can't do it. And it's like,
Yeah.
that's a normal part of the process. And you can just like take the next tiny step forward.
Mm.
And it's safe to do that.
I'm so glad. Thank you so much for walking us through a very real process that is so natural. It's so natural to look at what happened before and say, well, I've invested before and that didn't really bring a return. I'm
Mm-hmm.
still trying to pay off those programs. And
Mm-hmm.
now feeling this desire, the forbidden word, feeling this desire, feeling this inkling that something is possible, it is so easy to shut it down based on what happened before. Because what happened before is also traumatizing. There's
Mm-hmm.
trauma around all these experiences when things did not work out. And part of this journey is healing so that we create a different imprint, create different imprints of what's possible for
Yeah.
us. And mm, you said so much there that I wanted to highlight with understanding what actually comes up. You you spoke to what felt very real for you at the time was that it was all about the money, and now you see it differently.
Mm-hmm.
Would you speak to how you see it now? What that
Mm.
was about for you, knowing what you know?
Yeah, I think for me, it was sort of like you have this beautiful quote in the book where you talk about how trauma and patriarchy kind of has poured concrete around women's desires and that it's not safe for women to desire and it never has been safe. Um, and so for me, it was sort of stepping out into like, I want to do this just because I want to do it. And then being like, that's not a good enough reason.
Mm,
um, that's not a good reason to spend however much money, right? Like that, so that a good reason to spend however much money is like that business or marketing program that's like, oh, you're gonna 10 times your ROI, like whatever, right? Like that's a good reason to spend money, but like spending money on something that I desire is not a good enough reason.
mm,
And I think if I could just say also that I think I've been reflecting on like other things that I've invested in, and whenever I invested in something because I wanted the result that was being promised, but I didn't want the journey, it has not gone well for me.
yeah.
So whenever I have invested in like the business or marketing program, that's like at the end of this program, you're going to have a 5,000 person email list, or you're going to have this marketing strategy, or you're going to have whatever, this results, like it doesn't go well. But when I invest in something where it's like you're going to go through this process and it's like I want so badly to go through the process, like it always unfolds. It's so much easier. It's easier and it just pays off in like every way. So
Mm,
I think being able to just see that has been really useful for me as well, because I think especially as an entrepreneur, um, we're always getting messages like, if you just had this piece of knowledge, like it's gonna, right, you're gonna unlock all these other things, right? And I think for me, it's coming to understand that like it's not knowing the strategy, but it's like if I'm unlocking myself, it's like I'll always be able to iterate that knowledge into like the next deeper level of business, as opposed to like a strategy that's like very trendy but like might not work 6 months from now.
mm, unlocking yourself. I can't wait to talk more about this. And I want to reflect for everyone watching and who is maybe in a similar place that we refer to these barriers, we refer to these trauma defenses that just want to keep us safe, want to keep us safe from being hurt, from making a mistake, and mostly from breaking out of the invisible in the prison. We refer to them as prison guards, and they show up in every kind of imaginable uniform. They create all sorts of stories, and they're very believable, and they're very true. There's truth to all of them. They're very real stories, like the story about not having money. It's a very verifiable story. It's so easy to take it at face value and say, okay, I don't I that's what it is. Or the story that I don't have time. I don't have
Mm.
time. That's what it is. Yeah, it's not a good time. It's now is not a good time. Later is a good time. There is no such time as later. And I love that you said that that was the dangerous place for you, saying that it's later. No would have been a better place than later, because it was neither here nor there.
Mhm.
Um, and yeah, what was dangerous about it? Help me understand. Is there, did you recognize that it's specific to this journey, or does it show up in other ways for you that you were able to see, like, this is not a place of power for me?
Yeah, that's such a good question. So I recently like realized that because I was reading this book um, by this writer Stephen Pressfield called The War of Art, and it's all
Mhm.
about, it's a writing book, and he talks about this idea of, he said the enemy of every writer or every creative or every business owner is this idea of resistance, and it's like a capital R, resistance, and it could, you could talk about it as a prison guard as well. It's a similar concept.
Mhm.
um, but he says that resistance, one way that it manifests is in procrastination. That's like one of the most common ways, right? And he said the reason it's so insidious is that you never say, I'm never going to write my book. You say, of course I'm going to write my book, but I'm going to start tomorrow. I'm going to
Mhm.
start tomorrow. I'm going to start tomorrow. And then it's
Mhm.
like you're on your deathbed and it's like you never like dug into creating what you were meant to create in the world, right? And so I think looking back, I saw that place of like, I'm not going to do, like, it was sort of like if I had said to myself, I'm not going to do this work, I would have seen it so clearly as a prison guard keeping me from my desire. But the fact that I was saying like, I'm just going to do it later, it's just not now. Like, it's almost like it was a way of masking that guard to myself, if that makes sense, of like,
Yeah.
um, it's harder to see it when you're like, oh, I'll just do it later. I'll just do it later. Um, and maybe if I had said, like, if I had put into place, like, okay, I'm going to save this much money every month and I'm going to plan on doing the next round is in 3 months, like, I think that would be a much more powerful place of saying, like,
Yeah.
right. And being able to say, like, okay, if it's 3 months from now and I'm going to block off the time on my calendar right now, like, and I'm going to like put these steps into place, and like, it's very clear and powerful as opposed to just this nebulous, like, well, maybe I'll do it
Mhm.
later. And then it's sort of like, for me, it was like kind of sitting in the back of my mind as like this weight of like what is that poem about, like a dream deferred, sort of like you're always like deferring that dream, and it's like you're not making a clear plan to like move forward on it, and so it just says like more weight in the back of your mind.
Oh, I love this. A dream deferred. This is so painful. It's just, um, it just resonates with me, the pain of the dream deferred for so many women, so many humans, but I think for women especially, because we've never been allowed access to our desires. Desire is the most dangerous thing you can be in touch with, because it's so disruptive to the patriarchal status quo. That's what gets us on the journey of liberation. And so if you are in touch with your desire, for whatever that desire is, I hope you're learning now and taking that in. Keep your eyes open for prison guards that come up as these stories. The story of later, for example. Yeah, that's a really big one. I literally heard one woman had one woman say to me, "I really want to be free, but now is not a good time." And it stayed with me because it's so painful and it's so true. And I know, because she hasn't yet had the opportunity to recognize the prison guards for what they are and how to work with them. That's what we do in the program. She believed that story to be true, and I was just wondering, I'm still wondering what else is true for her in her life that's shrouded in that story, that I really want this, but now is not a good time. dream to
Yeah, I was sharing with you earlier that I was talking to I lead a free writing class every week. And so I was sharing with women this idea of desire. And I said, what if your desire to do something, in this case, it was to write a book. So what if your desire to write a book is like your calling to write a book? And so it's like, I say to anyone watching, it's like, what if your desire to do this work is like a calling to do it? And it's sort of like, there are plenty of people that are going to like read Dr. Valerie's book and be like, that's enough. Like they don't want to go deeper, right? But it's like, if you want to, that's like a signal. It's not just like, I don't know. I think we're so conditioned to believe that desire is selfish, but it's sort of like, what if desire was just like this little touchstone into like, for you to realize your purpose and like your mission in the world, it's like desire is like the next little stepping stone of like, this is the next step. And what if it wasn't selfish at all, but it was like actually the most selfless thing that you could do?
Ooh. Tell us more about that. What have you experienced on this journey that has shown you that indeed desire knew what she was up to, knew
Yeah.
what you were up to?
Okay, so this is a really good one, is especially for mamas out there. And so like I said, I have 2 little kids and we're in coronavirus shutdown. So my 4-year-old, he's doing better now. So when we're recording this, we've been closed. I live in Connecticut in the US, and we've been closed for about like 10 weeks, like 9 or 10 weeks at this point. And I would say the first 5 to 6 weeks, my 4-year-old was like a mess. Like he was like, what is happening? Like, why aren't I going to school? Why can't I see my friends? Like he was super like, he was acting out. He was like being like really aggressive, like with us, with his little sister who's like a little baby. Like he was like hitting and kicking and yelling and just like every little thing. I'm like, let's have lunch. No, like he totally like meltdown like about lunch. And I'm like, oh my God. Like, and it was just really stressful and difficult.
Yeah.
And we were sort of making like a lot of adjustments. We adjusted the schedule. We adjusted like all kinds of things. And I think when I stepped in and started doing this work, I would say, I think it happened within the first week. Like it was like all the tension in my relationship with him just like diffused. Like it was just like, we had just been like this to each other. Like he would do something, he would like bite me and I would like start screaming, or he would like kick his sister and I would just like lose my mind. Like, and I just, no matter what I did, I could not like get out of this cycle. Like my husband was like, you guys are in this negative cycle where like he ramps up and then you ramp up, and then we just kept like ramping each other up. And like literally, like I started doing some of the practices, like, and in the first week, it was like all of a sudden, both of us were just like this, like so much calmer. Like, and I'm not saying that he never acts out anymore, because he totally does. But it was sort of like, all of a sudden he accepted our new schedule. Like we found ways to like engage him in different activities. Like we just like, it stopped being like, before it had been like every single thing was like a fight. It was like, let's eat chocolate. He would like freak out. Like it was just like, there was like nothing that I could do. And so all of a sudden it was just like, everything just became so much easier. And like our whole family life has just been so much more peaceful. Just because I did what I wanted, which was to like do this program and then like take some time, like a little bit of time each day to like do the work. And I want to say as well, like another example of this is a few days ago, my husband and I sat down, we were having like a really intense emotional conversation. And we were unpacking something. It's been kind of like festering in our marriage for like several years. And it was sort of like something unresolved from like several years ago that every time we bring it up, we like fight about it. And we just can't seem to like see eye to eye. And we didn't have this like magical resolution, but it was the first time that I didn't totally like lose my mind and just like start sobbing uncontrollably and have to like end the conversation because I was so upset. Like I was able to just stay present and stay open and like listen to his point of view. And like I did still have some tears that came up, but it was more of a release than like like one of those, like where you're like sobbing and you like can't talk because you're just like so upset. And like previously, if we'd had this conversation, like again, I would have had to shut it down. I would have like lost sleep over it. Like I would have kind of been really, like we would have been tense with each other for like days and days. And we were able to just get to the end and be like, okay, like we didn't resolve this, but like I felt like we both heard each other for like one of the first times. And I could
Wow.
see so clearly how I used to go into this trauma response of like freeze and then flight. And I was able to like just like unwind that pattern, like just a little bit. And like it made such a huge difference in just being able to like he's always like, I feel like I can't talk to you because you just get so upset and emotional. And he's like, and I'm not yelling at you. Like, he's like, I don't know what else to do. Like, I'm just kind of expressing my opinion. And I feel like I'm doing something wrong, but like it's so hard to just like talk to you sometimes because you just like can't like sustain the conversation. Um, he didn't say it in that many words, but that like he was just like, I'm so glad that we were able to just like talk, like just
Yeah.
like have a conversation and like see it through to the end and sort of yeah, like I said, I'm able to unwind just that little bit of like freeze and flight. And I could just like sense it in my body. Like I was just so much calmer. Like I
Mm.
could kind of see things come up and I would be like, okay, like I see you. Like, but I wasn't in this like resistance and sort of like, you have to, like, I didn't feel like I had to make him agree with me. I didn't feel like I had to make him understand me. I was just kind of like, I understand myself and I'm trying to like stay open to what you're saying. And so all of this to say, like, I think in following my desire, like it's been able to change my marriage. It's changed my relationship with my son and like our whole family life. And I mean, we're talking like, I think we're 4 weeks in. I'm like 4 weeks into this journey. So it's not like, okay, like we're a year later. Like it happens like really quickly.
Amazing. And it's so valuable, such a valuable message for women when so many of us have this experience when our children act out. We think, okay, I'm a bad mother, I'm failing. Or
Mm-hmm.
if we have conflict in our relationship, oh, I have an anger problem, I'm failing, I'm not a good partner. And looking at this from the trauma lens, we learn, oh my gosh, this is my fight, flight, freeze reaction. It's not my fault, it's not my personality flaw. I'm not a bad mother, I'm not a bad partner.
Yeah.
If I unwind, if I recognize these reactions as trauma reactions and I unwind from them, and things shift. And these are not big traumas we're talking about.
Yeah.
These are things, right, we might not have even recognized as traumatic, but these reactions are trauma reactions. So that's how we know that it lives in the body. So thank you so much for showing us what's possible.
Mm-hmm.
Else that you'd like to speak to from what has shifted for you in terms of how you feel, your business, money, anything else, desire.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think two other things come to mind. One is I shared this on our call last night of I noticed in the past like week or so how relaxed I feel like just in my body. And I was like, I feel like I'm on vacation like all the time. And like the hilarious thing is that like not only am I not on vacation, but I'm like running my business with my 2 kids at home and like nothing has changed, right? In the outer circumstance. Um, nothing has changed like with in terms of like everything that's going on in the world. Um, but I didn't even know that like my default setting before had just been this like low level hum of anxiety just all the time. And like I didn't even know that that was there until it started going until it was like gone. And I wouldn't say it's like 100% gone or that I never feel anxious, but like I just feel like if my setting used to be like vibrating up here, like, oh, I just feel something, I just like I can't sit still, I should always be busy, like just sort of like this low level anxiety, like I feel like it's like down here. And it's like I see there's still like I'm sure that it can still like keep dropping, but I just like feel so much more relaxed, like
But I
my
just
husband
want
was
to
teasing me
say,
so.
I just
Go
want to
ahead.
say, highlight for people who have that experience, whether that state of buzz just feels normal, it's just who I am, right? I'm tightly
Yeah.
wound. We don't even recognize that it's anxiety, or you already know you have anxiety. This is in 4 weeks. We haven't been doing therapy. We haven't been doing one-on-one work. There's been no medication involved,
Yeah.
no dietary changes that at least we've been recommending.
Right.
It's 4 weeks of using these tools that we teach in the program that you've been using, and we've been processing together that experience. So that's especially, I want to say it for those who've carried that for a long time, thinking that's just me, it can't get any better. And I was in that boat too. My anxiety used to be severe, and I spent years in therapy, and it didn't work to change my state. So knowing that that's possible for me, for you, for others, I'm so grateful that you have a chance to share what's possible and how quickly, and with
Yeah.
how little
Yeah,
real.
and I want to say too, like, I don't want people to think like, oh, I'm putting in like so much time. Like, I think on a daily basis, for me, it's maybe like 20 to 30 minutes of time. And I split it up. Like, I usually like, I do the survival to thriving practice in the morning, and it takes like 10 to 15 minutes. I wake up like a little before my kids get up, and I do that. And I enjoy doing it. So it's not like Dr. Valerie told me to do this. Like, I like enjoy doing it, and I feel good
Great.
afterwards. So like, I do it, right? And so when my kids, my 4-year-old still miraculously is taking a nap. So at nap time, I do like maybe a 15 to 20 minute, like I do one of the meditations, or I might watch part of like, I might watch a video. Like, I'll just sort of like, or sometimes I'll just like journal or kind of like see what's coming up. And then I like, yeah, so it's like, it's not a ton of time that I'm investing every day. So
Woohoo.
yeah. And the other thing that I wanted to bring up, and this is so interesting because we've already established that I have massive prison guards around money. And I've done a lot of money work. I just want to say
Mhm.
that, right? So I've done a lot of thought work around money. I took a whole program about unwinding money shame. Like, I've done a lot of work on it, and it's still like there's more to uncover. There's like more to dig around. So I was noticing in our call last night that one of the people shared, she's like, oh yeah, and then I just made $30,000 in like a week. And I could see, like, it was like all of my prison guards were like sirens, like red flags. Like, I was like, oh my God, like there was like jealousy and like frustration, right? Like all these things. And I'm like, okay, like I just sort of noticed that happened. I'm like, okay, like that's so interesting, because like this other part of me, I'm like, I'm so happy for her. But then there was still this part of me that was like, there was like this resentment, and like, right, there's like all this stuff. And I'm like, okay, like I see you. And so then I had this realization that like, okay, I have this whole thing about, you know, did I make my money back? How quickly, right? Like if I invest in something. And so when we're recording this at this time, the Thriving Solution was $2,000. And I just received money for the Paycheck Protection Program, which in the US is money that the government is giving to small businesses. And I received $6,000. So 3 times the amount of money that I invested in the program. It's basically free money that I can use to pay myself and my business. I don't have to pay it back. I don't have to work for it, right? There's not like hours of client work that I need to put in. And I see myself like energetically like rejecting that money, right? Like, so there's all this stuff happening for me of like, well, I didn't earn it, like it's not really, it's not income, like, right? Like all of this stuff, and like, well, you know, like just like it's fascinating, right? So and I was like, oh, like I see that, like, and so it kind of highlighted for me. I'm like, well, how much would feel like enough? It's sort of like my brain and my prison guards are like, nothing, there's no amount that will make me feel safe, right? So just being able to see like, okay, like that's the next level of work for me, is like I get to create safety around having received this money that I feel like I didn't earn. I feel like maybe I don't deserve it. Part of me is like, I'm like, oh my gosh, can I really share? Like, a part of me was like, I shouldn't have to apply for this program. Like, I should just be able to make money on my own. But like, the truth is that my kids are home, I'm working less than half of my normal hour, right? There's all these things that are true,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And so, and yet there's still all of this like rejection and deserving and worthiness
Mm,
stuff that's happening. So that's kind of the next layer for me.
mm. Well, for 4 weeks in, I gotta say,
Not bad.
not bad, not a bad start. And even seeing what you're seeing now
Yeah.
through the lens of trauma, recognizing, oh, that's how it's playing out. That's BC. That's not me. It's not me who is bad with money or has money
Mm,
issues. And I'm glad that you brought up doing money work on the level of thought. And
mm,
that's where a lot of work begins, on the level of thought, understanding. And it doesn't take us into embodied trauma healing.
mm,
Understanding is helpful and important, but that's where our knots are. The body carries trauma. And when we untie the knots, that's when we create those possibilities of liberation, be it being in your body, more present with your husband, with yourself,
mm,
with your kids, and feeling, yeah, less anxiety, feeling like you're on vacation. Like all of these shifts became possible through doing embodied practices around them. So now that you have your eyes on the money, that's another deeper dive, and thankfully we're not done yet.
yeah.
So I'm so glad, I'm so happy to be on this journey together, Brooke. So honored. And I know that what you are embodying, the change you're embodying, you are taking it into the world, into your family, into your work with your clients who are writing world-changing books. So turns out that desire is the least selfish thing you can follow. Turns out that there are big ripple effects into the world. Is there anything else you would like to say as we wrap up our conversation for today?
I think just what you just said about desire is the least selfish thing. It's almost like, I feel like when you don't follow your desire and you don't follow it and you don't follow it and you're constantly saying no to what you really want, it's like everything gets tied up in so much resentment and so much just like ick of like of the no that it's like you can't show up as who you want to be. And so I think like what you just said about following desire like just unlocks all of these deeper layers, and kind of lights you up so that you can be this like lighter for your version that's like serving people around you and serving your purpose. And yeah, I've just been coming to see that more and more clearly.
So good. Thank you so much, Brooke. It's an honor and a pleasure changing the world with you.
Likewise, thank you.